page number 7. Patricia, Zach,
Here.
Sonata,
Here.
Alexis,
Here.
Ashton,
Here.
Deshay, Shamia, Heather, Leon, Abigail, Carrie, Abigail, Amber,
Here.
Nabu, Essence, Logan,
Here.
Rolanda, here, and Rebecca. All right.
Make sure we didn't skip out the others.
Yeah, some of you. Some of you. I guess I'm preaching to the choir, but some people might think that I don't notice when these people away.
Well, you notice when we come in late.
I notice when you come in and I notice when you leave early. It's in my job description to notice things, you know. Yes. I know some have some sort of orientation this week. A couple of students told me about that. Okay, so here is what this is. As far as the neuromuscular junction, what you guys have to know is that okay, let's just read your notes, hopefully it makes sense to you, and then we'll explain what's on the board. So on page number 7, it says the muscle fiber contraction. 4 steps must occur for skeletal muscle to contract. 1, nerve stimulation. Number 2, action potential, which is an electrical current, must be generated in the sarcolemma. Number 3, action potential must be propagated along the sarcolemma. Number 4, intracellular calcium levels must rise briefly. Okay, steps 1 and 2 occur at the neuromuscular junction. So, next paragraph, the nerve stimulus and events at the neuromuscular junction. Skeletal muscles are stimulated by somatic motor neurons. Axons, which are long thread-like extensions of the motor neurons, travel from the central nervous system to the skeletal muscle. So basically it is a little bit premature to discuss this because we really haven't finished, we haven't even talked about the nervous system. But basically remember how I told you before that the nervous system controls every function of your body, and that includes muscle contraction. So here it is, a neuromuscular junction, first of all, like the diagram explains, is made of 1, 2, and 3 components. You may want to list them. Again, they are listed in your notes, but if you want to keep them summarized, number 1, you have the motor neuron. Motor neuron is the number 1. So these are the parts of the neuromuscular junction. Motor neuron is the number 1. Specifically, the part of the motor neuron is the axon ending. Okay? So specifically, axon ending. Okay? So number 1, motor neuron, the axon ending. What you have to know about the axon ending is that the axon ending contains these vesicles with neurotransmitters. Okay, that's relevant. You'll see why in a second. Okay, so the axon ending contains these vesicles with neurotransmitters.
So the axon neuron is a part of the motor neuron, the ending of it.
The ending of it. All right. Number 2, you have the synaptic cleft. Number 2, you have the synaptic cleft. So the second component of the neuromuscular junction. Yes, we'll come back and describe that. But let's go to number 3 first. Okay, number 3, you have the motor end plate. So number 3, okay, is the motor end plate. And I want you guys to write down in parentheses, motor end plate is the part of the sarcolemma. This is a sarcolemma, which again is the membrane of the. What am I showing right here? If I do this, triad. You don't have to write it down, but just motor end plate is the part of the sarcolemma, and write down the motor end plate contains the receptors for the ACH. Receptors for the ACH. Okay, receptors for the ACH. All right, and then we said number 2 is what again? Synaptic cleft. You may want to write down there's the space between number 1 and number 3. Okay, so synaptic cleft is the space between the axon ending and the motor end plate. All right, so basically this is what it is. My goal here, again remember, is to create muscle contraction. So this neuromuscular junction is the mechanism that allows for that to happen. And when I create muscle contraction, what has to happen at the innermost level of those filaments? Remember, if I contract, I have to allow for the cross bridge to attach to the binding site. Remember that? Okay? And that can only happen if what? Those two things expose the binding sites, right? And those two things can expose the binding sites if they are activated by what?
Calcium.
Exactly. But now my question is, how does my triad know when to release the calcium? So this is the missing link, okay? Again, the boss of everything is my nervous system, remember that? So then, my brain will conduct this nerve impulse or the action potential that your notes describe. And as the action potential travels all the way to the axon ending, these vesicles with neurotransmitters, specifically the neurotransmitter that I'm talking, so we have a bunch of neurotransmitters. The one that's specific to my neuromuscular junction is this one, acetylcholine. So as soon as my impulse travels to these vesicles, they will empty out the ACH. The ACH will travel across the synaptic cleft, and as soon as the ACH attaches to these receptors, this attachment is my trigger for my calcium to be released. Okay? So it is a full chain of reaction. And that's the chain of reaction that is being explained on this page. Okay? So what I want you guys again to understand is that you have to know the components of the neuromuscular junction, the three components. List them again. Number one, what do you say? Motor neuron, okay. What specifically, which part of the motor neuron? Axon ending. What's important for us to know about the axon ending? What does it contain? Vesicles. Which one particularly? ACH or acetylcholine. Okay. The second component of the neuromuscular junction is what? The synaptic cleft. And the third component is what? The motor end plate, or part of the sarcolemma, right? What's important about the motor end plate? What does it contain?
Receptors for ACH.
Receptor for ACH. Okay, so then on the bottom of page number 7 in your notes, you have the events. Nerve impulse arrives at the axon terminal, causing the ACH to be released into the synaptic cleft. Clear so far? Okay. ACH diffuses across the cleft and binds with the receptors on the sarcolemma. Clear? Okay. ACH binding leads to the electrical events to generate an action potential through the actual muscle fiber. Okay, skip this next page. Skip this next page. ACH is quickly broken down. That's important. But before we get to that, before we say that ACH is quickly broken down, after you say ACH binding leads to electrical events, that ultimately generates an action potential. Now you know what those events are. You tell me, what are those events? So when the ACH binds to the receptor, what do we say happen next? That's the trigger for what? For the calcium to be released. So write down. Okay, in there, continue. Calcium is released. So calcium is released from the triad. Which then leads to activation of, right, which then leads to activation of, and if I want more details, you can also tell me activation of troponin and tropomyosin, right? Okay, would this make any sense if we didn't cover this?
No.
That's why I'm talking about this note. That's a horrible, okay? I don't like them at all. But that's the best that we have. So that's why I'm giving you this extra information. Okay, on the next page, you have some information about myasthenia gravis. It kind of explains to you, how some toxins can affect the events at the neuromuscular junction. You can read, I'm not gonna ask any questions on that. You can cross out the rest of page 8. Yes. Cross out page 9. We'll talk about this again under the nervous system. And we're going to page 1 of part B, so here's what you have to know there. Okay. Do you have a page 10? Yeah, cross out page 10. Hold on, just a second. Just a second. I want to make sure that, okay, it's not here. At one point, we do have to talk about the energy for muscle. Okay, perfect. Good, so page number 1, part B, what you have to know there is the motor unit, what a motor unit is. Okay, so highlight the definition. Motor unit is the motor neuron and all the muscle fibers, which could be 4 to several, that it supplies. Okay, so basically one motor neuron can innervate more than just one, okay, muscle fiber. Muscle twitch, highlight the definition, just note the definition of the muscle twitch, the simplest contraction resulting from a muscle fiber's response to a single action potential from the motor neuron. Okay, so the muscle twitch is the simplest contraction. Okay, page 2, cross out. Okay, page 3, middle of the page 3, you have the following definitions. Sub-threshold stimulus, do you see that? Okay, so in order for an action potential, to cause a contraction, the potential has to be strong enough. So what sub-threshold stimulus means is the stimulus is not strong enough. So there is no contraction whatsoever, okay? So I can just be like, okay, I'm going to cause you a little bit of action potential. I can't do that. It's one of those things, you're either pregnant or you're not. You cannot be just a little bit pregnant, It's the same with this contraction. You have to have a strong enough stimulus to cause it or it's just not going to happen, okay? Threshold stimulus is stimulus that is strong enough to cause an observable contraction. And maximum stimulus, stronger stimulus that increases maximum contractile force. So know those 3 definitions. Okay, on the next page, okay, page number 4. You have to know the difference between an isotonic muscle contraction and isometric muscle contraction. So if it's an isotonic contraction, muscle changes in length and moves load. Okay, so isotonic, muscle changes in length. Okay, isometric, the muscle, when you have an isometric contraction, the muscle length doesn't change. Okay, the muscle length doesn't change. So here's the difference. Isometric, when you exercise, okay, and you load your muscle, okay, you load your muscle strong enough to where you cannot actually move the muscle, but it's still contracted, okay. So for example, if I have I'll give you your arm, okay. So hold it like this, okay. So I'm gonna say to her, try to push against my hand, okay. She's forcing, she's having a muscle tone, but she cannot move it. So the muscle length doesn't change, okay? That's isometric, okay? Now if I said, now go ahead and flex your biceps, okay? It's the difference. That's isotonic, okay? It does change the length, it shortens the length of the muscle. Okay, there's a difference. One happens without changing the length, one happens with changing the length. All right, now energy for contraction, that's also important. Okay, energy for muscle contraction, page number 4, comes from, what's the molecule again? ATP. So the ATP is being supplied by, do you see there? 1, direct phosphorylation, do you see that? Okay. 2, anaerobic pathway, and number 3, aerobic respiration. Do you guys see that? Okay, the bottom of page number 4. So here's how we generate ATP. Direct phosphorylation of ADP by creatine phosphates. That's one way of producing ATP. So go on to the next page. Page number 5 explains this step. So direct phosphorylation. Creatine phosphate, highlight, is a unique molecule located in muscle fiber that donates a phosphate to ADP to instantly form ATP. Does it make sense? So here's, let me explain. You're gonna love this. It will make sense in a second. So, ATP is the abbreviation for a molecule called adenosine triphosphate, right? Triphosphate, so ATP. So if I say triphosphate, how many phosphate groups do I have?
Three.
Three, right? So I have a molecule that kind of looks like this. Phosphate, phosphate, phosphate with the adenosine. I'm going to show this, okay, the adenosine part. Triphosphate, three phosphate groups. So so this is my ATP, okay? When I use ATP, so when I need energy, basically I consume ATP. So what that means is every time I consume one ATP, here's what happens. The energy on this molecule is stored on this bond right there. This is the bond that gives me my energy that I'm looking for. Everything else on the molecule is not extremely important right now. So when I say I'm going to use one ATP for energy production, here's what I have resulting. Phosphate, phosphate, and now because I broke this bond and I released the energy from it, I'm going to have what? A phosphate, right? As a result of that, I have two phosphates attached and one by itself, okay? Now, if I have two phosphates attached, can I still call this molecule ATP? No. What do you think I can call this molecule?
ADP.
Exactly. ADP, why? D as in adenosine diphosphate, number 2, and a phosphate by itself, okay? So every time my muscle uses ATP for energy production, the byproduct, the result of the reaction would be ADP and phosphate by itself. Does my ADP contain energy, yes or no? No, not really. Where is my energy located? What's the form of energy that I need? ATP. I need the ATP and I need this last bond. However, I can recycle this ATP. And this is what your notes say, okay? Your notes say that on the top of page 5, creatine phosphate is a unique molecule that donates phosphate to ADP to turn it back into ATP. So creatine phosphate can give me additional phosphates in case I have too much ADP and I cannot do anything with it. So then what it does, creatine phosphate, when I attach this, I can reverse this reaction. ADP plus phosphate can become what? ATP, but I need to have this molecule, creatine kinase. Okay, so creatine kinase is an enzyme, okay, that carries out the phosphate. So creatine enzyme is required if I need to combine ADP with phosphate in order to produce for the ATPs.
So like bodybuilders and when they use creatine, that's what that's for.
Energy drinks.
Just a real quick question. Workout, they use a lot of creatine, you go buy creatine over the counter. What exactly what's the difference of the creatine that's in your body?
Artificial creatine is artificially made, okay, the same molecule basically, okay, but it's synthesized, okay, creatine, and that's why. It's giving you extra phosphates basically.
So it's artificial.
Yes. Okay.
Is that harmful?
Yeah, well, it's FDA approved. You know, FDA approved lots of medicines that we find out 10 years later it's killing people right and left, you know. So they say it's okay. But here's the problem with this though. Yeah, it's gonna give an instant buzz. the question is, those drinks are normally loaded also with sugar. So where is your buzz really coming from? From this, when you drink that stuff?
The sugar.
Or is it from the other stuff they add? If you read, how much other stuff they have in there. So I would, if you would ask me, I would not use that stuff. Take longer, work harder and smarter and cleaner, okay? And the results that you have are gonna be much more efficient and long term. But that's exactly the principle, so now you understand. Our sarcoplasm has a bunch of ADPs ready for use at all times. Creatine is giving me the extra phosphate that I need to link it back to the ADP and form my extra energy molecules. So that's, that's that. Another source of energy production is the anaerobic pathways, so glycolysis and aerobic respiration. So just list them, okay? What you have to know, again, is that there are 3 different steps. Direct phosphorylation, number 1. Anaerobic pathway, which involves glycolysis and lactic acid formation. And number 3, aerobic respiration, which we're not gonna discuss here. So cross out the rest of page number 5. You can read through page 6. And as far as part C, what we have to cover there. Again, if you go into PT or massage therapy, you're going to cover this in a lot more details. They're going to talk about, different type of stimulations and recruitment of muscle fiber. I'm not covering all of that in here, but off of that part C, I want you guys to go all the way to page number 3. And just remember, when it comes to smooth muscle, again, all that we cover so far is what type of muscle tissue, cardiac, smooth, or skeletal. Skeletal, okay? Remember the smooth muscle location, we have it in the organs, right? And blood vessels, but not in the heart. And then cardiac muscle. Okay, sorry, page number 7, go all the way to page number 7. You have to know the difference between the types of smooth muscle, unitary and multi-unit. Okay, so read that, those paragraphs. So know all of those differences. And I don't care about the developmental aspects of muscle. I'm not going to ask any questions. Okay? That's all you have to know. So that ends the information that you have to know as it pertains to muscle tissue and your relation test. Okay? Next Wednesday, so Wednesday we're going to cover what we have left, which is the joints. Once again, you have the study guide available. Make sure you start studying. Are you guys studying in groups? Are you having groups for? No?
It's hard for me to, I want to.
Time-wise, yeah.
But it's like,
Schedule-wise, I understand that. Okay, we'll have time to recap briefly all of this on Wednesday. Okay, but you have to study so that you know what we're recapping. I'll see you in the lab.